Amoretti 75. One Day I Wrote Her Name, by Edmund Spenser. Recording by Chris Pyle. Amoretti 75. One day I wrote her name. One day I wrote her name upon the strand, and came the waves and washed it away. Again I wrote it with a second hand, but came the tide and made my pains his prey. Vain man, said she, thou dost in vain essay a mortal thing so to immortalize. For I myself shall like to this decay, and eke my name be wiped out likewise. Not so, quoth I, let baser things devise to die in dust, but you shall live by fame. My verse your virtues rare shall eternize, and in the heavens write your glorious name. Where, when as death shall all the world subdue, our love shall live and later life renew. End of poem. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Bath and Popham Beach by M. F. Sweetser. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by BettyB. Bath and Popham Beach. Bays resplendent as the heaven, starred and gemmed by thousand isles, gird thee Casco with its islets, Quoddy with its dimpled smiles. An hour and a half by rail eastward from Portland, passing around Casco Bay and through Brunswick, the seat of the famous Bowdoin College, and we come to Bath, the bright and busy shipbuilding city on the Kennebec, a central point for several most interesting excursions. It is a long drawn-out place, hugging the deep bright river for a league, but not venturing far inland, with 10 or 12,000 inhabitants and a church for each 1,000, and public buildings of the United States and Sagadahoc County. In the old days, some of the finest of American ships were built here, and the local shipwrights still maintain their traditions and their high repute, and from time to time launch a noble and beautiful vessel. Here the cars are ferried across the river to Woolwich, on the Knox and Lincoln Railroad to Rockland and Penobscot Bay. Hence, also steamboats depart daily for the ports on the Kennebec River, and for Popham Beach, and for the land and water maze leading to Squirrel Island and Damariscotta. The drive to Orr's Island leads through miles of forests of murmuring pines and hemlocks, and luxuriant balsam firs, with occasional glimpses of the islanded sea. From the point where the road crosses Corkscrew Hill, the view is of rare and unusual beauty, including Cape Small Point, Harpswell Neck, and many beautiful islets, studding the many-voiced main. At the foot of the hill is the bridge leading to Orr's Island, a bold, precipitous, evergreen-crowned shore traversed along its lofty central ridge by a road which gives radiant views on either side over the bay and its islands. Popham Beach extends from the mouth of the great Kennebec River for a good league, to where Morse's River enters the sea, at low tide a broad and firm expanse of sand affording a capital carriage course, and at high tide overswept by line after line of roaring breakers. The seaward view includes Cape Small Point, the warder of Casco Bay, Seguin Island with its lonely lighthouse, and several neighboring islets. The openings of the Kennebec, continually traversed by the shipping of Bath and Gardner and other ports, their white sails flashing in the light, and the historic hills of Georgetown, won from the red men by the life blood of many a gallant Englishman. Atkins Bay, just to the northward, nearly 3 miles long, affords the best of facilities for still water boating and bathing, and is overlooked by the ponderous rocks of Cox's Head, whose ancient fortifications are now buried in ruins and overgrown by the flowers of the field. There are excursions in every direction, including the magnificent sail to Seguin, the weekly steamboat trip around to Booth Bay and Wiscasset, the short row to Cox's Head, the 3-mile voyage to Pond Island and its lighthouse, and the trip to Fox Island, with its long bar reaching to the mainland. People who want to visit Popham Beach go to Bath by rail, and there take the little steamboat that runs down the Kennebec semi-daily. The hotels at Popham are the Ocean View and Eureka, the former on a cool bluff 100 feet high, and the other down near Fort Popham, an unfinished fortress on Honeywell's Point. The true mouth of the Kennebec lies between this sandy cape and Stage Island, and the great river, the outlet of Moosehead Lake, and scores of other lonely lakelets in the forests of northern Maine, is here compressed into a channel of less than a half mile in width. So numerous are the rocks and islets off shore here that mariners do not consider themselves out of the Kennebec until they have passed Seguin. Around this lovely region of blue bays and romantic headlands and silver-sanded beaches hangs the imperishable glamour of history and poetry and tradition. It was in the summer of 1607 that Raleigh Gilbert and George Popham sailed away from English Plymouth with 100 sturdy West of England men, besides the mariners, on 2 vessels, the Gift of God and the Mary and John, well laden also with ordnance and provisions. After touching at Monhegan and Stage Island, they founded their plantation not far from Honeywell's Point, and erected a church and 50 huts, and also a strong defense, which they called Fort St. George. Gathered around their chaplain, the little band recited the services of the Church of England, and laid the foundations of what they hoped might become a powerful new Anglo-Catholic state. If Miles Standish had been up here, things might have gone better. But the fort was blown up by the Indians, who themselves also went up with it, the provisions gave out, Popham died, and so after a few months of what they were pleased to call nothing but extreme extremity, the easy-going Episcopalian colonists gave up their attempt and returned disconsolate to merry England. End of Bath and Popham Beach by M. F. Sweetser.
Bathing in Salt Lake by John Muir from his collection Steep Trails. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Douglas Wood, near Salt Lake City, Utah. Bathing in Salt Lake. When the north wind blows, bathing in Salt Lake is a glorious baptism, for then it is all wildly awake with waves, blooming like a prairie in snowy crystal foam. Plunging confidently into the midst of the grand uproar, you are hugged and welcomed and swim without effort, rocking and heaving up and down in delightful rhythm, while the winds sing in chorus and the cool, fragrant brine searches every fiber of your body, and at length you are tossed ashore with a glad Godspeed, braced and salted and clean as a saint. The nearest point on the shoreline is distant about 10 miles from Salt Lake City, and is almost inaccessible on account of the boggy character of the ground. But by taking the Western Utah Railroad at a distance of 20 miles, you reach what is called Lake Point, where the shore is gravelly and wholesome, and abounds in fine retreating bays that seem to have been made on purpose for bathing. Here the northern peaks of the Ochre Range plant their feet in the clear blue brine with fine curbing insteps, leaving no space for muddy levels. The crystal brightness of the water, the wild flowers, and the lovely mountain scenery make this a favorite summer resort for pleasure and health seekers. Numerous excursion trains are run from the city, and parties, some of them numbering upwards of 1,000, come to bathe and dance and roam the flowery hillsides together. But at the time of my first visit, in May, I fortunately found myself alone. The hotel and bathhouse, which form the chief improvements of the place, were sleeping in winter silence, notwithstanding the year was in full bloom. It was one of those genial Sundays, when flowers and flies come thronging to the light, and birds sing their best. The mountain ranges, stretching majestically north and south, were piled with pearly cumuli, the sky overhead was pure azure, and the wind-swept lake was all a roll and a roar with whitecaps. I sauntered along the shore until I came to a sequestered cove, where buttercups and wild peas were blooming close down to the limit reached by the waves. Here, I thought, is just the place for a bath, but the breakers seemed terribly boisterous and forbidding as they came rolling up the beach, or dashed white against the rocks that bounded the cove on the east. The outer ranks, ever broken, ever builded, formed a magnificent rampart, sculptured and corniced like the hanging wall of a Berschrund, and appeared hopelessly insurmountable, however easily one might ride the swelling waves beyond. I feasted a while on their beauty, watching their coming in from afar like faithful messengers to tell their stories one by one. Then I turned reluctantly away to botanize and wait a calm. But the calm did not come that day, nor did I wait long. In an hour or two I was back again to the same little cove. The waves still sang the old storm song and rose in high crystal walls, seemingly hard enough to be cut in sections like ice. Without any definite determination, I found myself undressed as if someone else had taken me in hand, and while one of the largest waves was wringing out its message and spending itself on the beach, I ran out with open arms to the next, ducked beneath its breaking top, and got myself into a right lusty relationship with the brave old lake. Away I sped in free, glad motion, as if, like a fish, I had been afloat all my life, now low and out of sight in the smooth, glassy valleys, now bounding aloft on firm combing crests, while the crystal foam beat against my breast with keen, crisp clashing, as if composed of pure salt. I bowed to every wave, and each lifted me right royally to its shoulders, almost setting me erect on my feet, while they all went speeding by like living creatures, blooming and rejoicing in the brightness of the day, and chanting the history of their grand mountain home. A good deal of nonsense has been written concerning the difficulty of swimming in this heavy water. One's head would go down and heels come up, and the acrid brine would burn like fire. I was conscious only of a joyous exhilaration, my limbs seemingly heeding their own business without any discomfort or confusion, so much so that without previous knowledge, my experience on this occasion would not have led me to detect anything peculiar. In calm weather, however, the sustaining power of the water might probably be more marked. This was by far the most exciting and effective wave excursion I have ever made this side of the Rocky Mountains, and when, at its close, I was heaved ashore among the sunny grasses and flowers, I found myself a new creature indeed, and went bounding along the beach with blood all aglow, reinforced by the best salts of the mountains and ready for any race. Since the completion of the Transcontinental and Utah Railways, this magnificent lake in the heart of the continent has become as accessible as any watering place on either coast, and I am sure that thousands of travelers, sick and well, would throng its shores every summer were its merits but half known. Lake Point is only an hour or two from the city, and has hotel accommodations and a steamboat for excursions, and then, besides the bracing waters, the climate is delightful. The mountains rise into the cool sky, furrowed with canyons almost Yosemitic in grandeur, and filled with a glorious profusion of flowers and trees. Lovers of science, lovers of wildness, lovers of pure rest, will find here more than they may hope for. As for the Mormons one meets, however their doctrines be regarded, they will be found as rich in human kindness as any people in all our broad land, while the dark memories that cloud their earlier history will vanish from the mind as completely as when we bathe in the fountain azure of the Sierra. From a letter dated Lake Point, Utah, May 20th, 1877. End of Bathing in Salt Lake by John Muir.
The Boy by the Beach by Arthur Thomas Quiller Couch. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Beeswaxcandle. The Boy by the Beach. There are in this small history some gaps that can never be filled up, but as much as I know, I will tell you. The cottage where Kit lived until he was 5 years old stands at the head of a little beach of white shingle, just inside the harbour's mouth, so that all day long Kit could see the merchant ships trailing in from sea and passing up to the little town, or dropping down to the music of the capstan song, and the calls and the creaking as their crews hauled up the sails. Some came and went under bare poles in the wake of panting tugs, but those that carried canvas pleased Kit more. For a narrow coombe wound up behind the cottage, and down this coombe came not only the brook that splashed by the garden gate, but a small breeze always blowing, that you might count on seeing the white sails take it, and curve out majestically as soon as they ever came opposite the cottage, and hold it until under the lee of the Battery Point. Besides these delights, the cottage had a plantation of ash and hazel above it, that climbed straight to the smooth turf and the 4 guns of the battery, and a garden with a tamarisk hedge, and a bed of white violets, the earliest for miles around, and a fuchsia tree 3 times as high as Kit, and a pink climbing rose that looked in at Kit's window and blossomed till late in November. Here the child lived alone with his mother, for there was a vagueness of popular opinion respecting Kit's father, while about his mother, unhappily, there was no vagueness at all. She was a handsome, low-browed woman, with a loud laugh, a defiant manner, and a dress of violent hues. Decent wives clutched their skirts in passing her, but as a set-off she was on excellent terms with every sea captain and mate that put into the port. All these captains and mates knew Kit, and made a pet of him, and indeed there was a curious charm in the great serious eyes and reddish curls of this child whom other children shunned. No one can tell if he felt his isolation, but of course it drove him to return the men's friendship, and to wear a man's solemnity and habit of speech. The woman dressed him carefully, in glaring colours, out of her means, and as for his manners, they would no doubt have become false and absurd as time went and knowledge came, but at the age of 4 they were those of a prince. "My father was a ship's captain too," he would tell a new acquaintance, "but he was drowned at sea. Oh, a long while ago, years and years before I was born." The beginning of the speech he had learnt from his mother, and the misty antiquity of the loss his own childish imagination suggested. The captains, hearing it, would wink at each other, swallow down their grins, and gravely inform him of the sights he would see and the lands he would visit when the time came for him, too, to be a ship's captain. Often and often I have seen him perched with his small legs dangling on one of the green posts of the quay, and drinking in their talk of green icebergs and flaming parrots and pigtailed Chinamen, of coral reefs of all marvellous colours, and suns that burnt men black, and monkeys that hung by their tails to the branches and pelted the passers-by with coconuts, and the rest of it. And the child would go back to the cottage in a waking dream, treading bright clouds of fancy, with perhaps a little carved box or knick-knack in his hand, the gift of some bearded, tender-hearted ruffian. It was pitiful. Of course he picked up their talk, and very soon could swear with equal and appalling freedom in English, French, Swedish, German, and Italian. But the words were words to him, and more, as he had no morals. Nice distinctions between good and evil never entered the little room where he slept, to the sound only of the waves that curved round Battery Point and tumbled on the beach below. And I know that one summer evening, when the scandalized townsmen and their wedded wives assembled, and marched down to the cottage with the intent to lead the woman in a ram-raiding, the sight of Kit playing in the garden, and his look of innocent delight as he ran in to call his mother out, took the courage out of them, and sent them home up the hill, like sheep. Of course the truth must have come to him soon, but it never did, for when he was just 5, the woman took a chill and died in a week. She had left a little money, and the vicar, rather than let Kit go to the workhouse, spent it to buy the child admission to an orphanage in the Midlands, 100 miles away. So Kit hung the rose tree with little scraps of crape, and was put, dazed and white, into a train, and whisked 100 miles off. And everybody forgot him. Kit spent 2 years at the orphanage in an antique preposterous suit, snuff-coloured coat with lapels, canary waistcoat, and corduroy small clothes, and they gave him his meals regularly. There were 99 other boys who all throve on the food, but Kit pined. And the 99, being full of food, made a racket at times. But Kit found it quiet, deathly quiet, and his eyes wore a listening look. For the truth was, he missed the noise of the beach, and was listening for it. And deep down in his small heart the sea was piping and calling to him. The world had grown dumb, and he yearned always, until they had to get him a new canary waistcoat, for the old one had grown too big. At night, from his dormitory window, he could see a rosy light in the sky. At first he thought this must be a pillar of fire that put there to guide him home, but it was only the glare of furnaces in a manufacturing town not far away. When he found this out, his heart came near to break, and afterwards he pined still faster. One evening a lecture was given in the dining room of the orphanage. The subject was the Holy Land, and the lecturer illustrated it with views from the magic lantern. Kit, who sat in one of the back rows, was moderately excited at first, but the views of barren hills and sands and ruins and palm trees and cedars wearied him after a while. He had closed his eyes, and the lecturer's voice became a sing-song in which his heart searched, as it always searched, for the music of the beach. When, by way of variety, for it had little to do with the subject, the lecturer slipped in a slide that was supposed to depict an incident on the homeward voyage, a squall in the Mediterranean. It was a stirring picture, with an inky sky and the squall bursting from it, and driving a small ship heeling over white-crested waves. Of course the boys drew their breath. And then something like a strangling sob broke out on the stillness, frightening the lecturer, and a shrill cry, "Don't go! Oh, damn it all! Don't go! Take me home!" And there at the back of the room a small boy stood up on his form, and stretched out both hands to the painted ship, and shrieked and panted. There was a blank silence. Then the matron hurried up, took him firmly in her arms, and carried him out. "Don't go! Oh, for the Lord Almighty's sake, don't go!" And as he was borne down the passages, his cry sounded among the audience like the wail of a little lost soul. The matron carried Kit to the sick room and put him to bed. After quieting the child a bit, she left him, taking away the candle. Now the sick room was on the ground floor, and Kit lay still a very short while. Then he got out of bed, groped for his clothes, managed to dress himself, and opening the window, escaped onto the quiet lawn. Then he turned his face southwest, towards home and the sea, and ran. How could he tell where they lay? God knows. Ask the swallow how she can tell when in autumn the warm south is afire in her brain. I believe that the sea's breath was in the face of this child of 7, and its scent in his nostrils, and its voice in his ears, calling, summoning all the way. I only know that he ran straight towards his home, 100 miles off, and that next morning they found his canary waistcoat and snuff-coloured coat in a ditch, 2 miles from the orphanage, due southwest. Of his adventures on the road, the story is equally silent, as I warned you. But the small figure comes into view again a week later, on the hillside of the coombe above his home. And when he saw the sea and the white beach glittering beneath him, he did not stop, even for a moment, but reeled down the hill. The child was just a living skeleton. He had neither hat, coat, nor waistcoat. 1 foot only was shod. The other had worn through the stocking, and ugly red blisters showed on the sole as he ran. His face was far whiter than his shirt, save for a blue welt or two and some ugly red scratches, and his gaunt eyes were full of hunger and yearning, and his lips happily babbling the curses that the ship's captains had taught him. He reeled down the hill to the cottage. The tenant was a newcomer to the town, and had lately been appointed musketry instructor to the battery above. He was in the garden pruning the rose-tree, but did not particularly notice the boy, and the boy passed without turning his head. The tide on the beach was far out and just beginning to flow, and there was the same dull plash on the pebbles, the same twinkle as the sun struck across the ripples. The sun was sinking. In 10 minutes it would be behind the hill. No one knows what the waves said to Kit, but he flung himself among them with a choking cry and drank the brine and tossed it over his head and shoulders and chest, and lay down and let the small waves play over him, and cried and laughed aloud till the sun went down. Then he clambered onto a rock some way above them, and sat down to watch the water rise, and watching it fell asleep, and sleeping had his wish, and went out to the wide seas. End of The Boy by the Beach, by Arthur Thomas Quiller Couch.
Calais Sands by Matthew Arnold. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. Calais Sands. 1,000 knights have reined their steeds to watch this line of sand hills run along the never-silent strait to Calais glittering in the sun. To look toward Ardres' golden field, across this wide aerial plain, which glows as if the Middle Age were gorgeous upon earth again. Oh, that to share this famous scene, I saw upon the open sand thy lovely presence at my side, thy shawl, thy look, thy smile, thy hand. How exquisite thy voice would come, my darling, on this lonely air! How sweetly would the fresh sea breeze shake loose some band of soft brown hair! And now my glance but once hath roved o'er Calais and its famous plain, to England's cliffs my gaze it turned, o'er the blue strait mine eyes I strain. Thou comest, yes, the vessel's cloud hangs dark upon the rolling sea. Oh, that yon seabird's wings were mine, to win one instant's glimpse of thee. I must not spring to grasp thy hand, to woo thy smile, to seek thine eye, but I may stand far off and gaze, and watch thee pass unconscious by, and spell thy looks and guess thy thoughts, mixed with the idlers on the pier. Ah, might I always rest unseen, so I might have thee always near. To-morrow hurry through the fields of Flanders to the storied Rhine. To-night those soft-fringed eyes shall close beneath one roof, my queen, with mine. End of Calais Sands by Matthew Arnold. Recording by Alan Mapstone in Oxford, England. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Crescent Beach by Hattie Howard. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. Read by Beeswaxcandle. Crescent Beach. Oh, Crescent Beach, that day shall be a treasured one in memory, that lured me from my distant home upon thy lovely shores to roam, to linger with enraptured glance o'er ocean's limitless expanse, half wishing that before my eyes fair Aphrodite might arise, or from their hidden watery cells in myriad rainbow-coloured shells Nereides with dripping locks might grace the rough Neptunian rocks, defying in their revelry that ancient monarch of the sea, whose trident marks his lordly reign o'er every creature of the main. I watched the countless dimpled smile illuminate thy waters while, the wish unconscious half expressed, that I might find therein sweet rest. I'd just as soon beneath the wave return my life to him who gave, or let my bones for ever bleach upon the sands of Crescent Beach. Throughout the years each breaking wave shall be a teardrop o'er my grave, and each scintillating gem unite to sing my requiem. Of him who taught beside the sea of ever-blessed Galilee, his true disciples meet to teach beside the waves at Crescent Beach. Sounding voices on the shore commingle with the ocean's roar, and wonderful sweet harmonies are caught by every passing breeze. The fragrant, flower-besprinkled sod re-echoes prayer and praise to God. And Crescent Beach, in beauty crowned, becomes enchanted, hallowed ground. They who the Saviour's name revere shall here unite from year to year, till o'er our land the fame shall reach of Christians met at Crescent Beach. End of Crescent Beach by Hattie Howard. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full. The moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand, glimmering and vast, out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet as the night air, only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land, listen. You hear the grating roar of pebbles, which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand, begin and cease, and then again begin, with tremulance cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. The sea of faith was once, too, at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. But now I only hear its melancholy, long, withdrawing roar, retreating to the breath of the night wind, down the vast edges drear and naked shingles of the world. Ah, love, let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here as on a darkling plain, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies clash by night. End of Dover Beach by Matthew Arnold. Recording by Patrick Wallace, London. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
The Fisher's Boy by Henry David Thoreau. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Michele Fry, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The Fisher's Boy. My life is like a stroll upon the beach, as near the ocean's edge as I can go. My tardy steps its waves sometimes o'erreach, sometimes I stay and let them overflow. My sole employment is, and scrupulous care, to place my gains beyond the reach of tides, each smoother pebble and each shell more rare, which ocean kindly to my hand confides. I have but few companions on the shore, they scorn the strand who sail upon the sea. Yet oft I think the ocean they've sailed o'er is deeper known upon the strand to me. The middle sea contains no crimson dulse, its deeper waves cast up no pearls to view. Along the shore my hand is on its pulse, and I converse with many a shipwrecked crew. End of The Fisher's Boy by Henry David Thoreau.
The Landing at V Beach, near Sedd-el-Bahr, by John Masefield. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The Landing at V Beach, near Sedd-el-Bahr. The men told off for this landing were the Dublin Fusiliers, the Munster Fusiliers, half a battalion of the Hampshire Regiment, and the West Riding Field Company. 3 companies of the Dublin Fusiliers were to land from towed lighters, the rest of the party from a tramp steamer, the Collier River Clyde. This ship, a conspicuous sea mark at Cape Helles throughout the rest of the campaign, had been altered to carry and land troops. Great gangways or entry ports had been cut in her sides on the level of her between decks, and platforms had been built out upon her sides below these so that men might run from her in a hurry. The plan was to beach her as near the shore as possible, and then drag or sweep the lighters, which she towed, into position between her and the shore so as to make a kind of boat bridge from her to the beach. When the lighters were so moored as to make this bridge, the entry ports were to be opened, the waiting troops were to rush out onto the external platforms, run from them onto the lighters, and so to the shore. The ship's upper deck and bridge were protected with boilerplate and sandbags, and a case made for machine guns was built upon her forecastle so that she might reply to the enemy's fire. 5 picket boats, each towing 5 boats or launches full of men, steamed alongside the River Clyde and went ahead when she grounded. She took the ground rather to the right of the little beach, some 400 yards from the ruins of Sedd-el-Bahr Castle, before the Turks had opened fire. But almost as she grounded, when the picket boats with their tows were ahead of her, only 20 or 30 yards from the beach, every rifle and machine gun in the castle, the town above it, and in the curved, low, strongly trenched hill along the bay, began a murderous fire upon ship and boats. There was no question of their missing. They had their target on the front and both flanks at ranges between 100 and 300 yards in clear daylight, 30 boats bunched together and cramped with men and a good big ship. The first outbreak of fire made the bay as white as a rapid, for the Turks fired not less than 10,000 shots a minute for the first few minutes of that attack. Those not killed in the boats at the first discharge jumped overboard to wade or swim ashore. Many were killed in the water, many who were wounded were swept away and drowned. Others, trying to swim in the fierce current, were drowned by the weight of their equipment. But some reached the shore, and these instantly doubled out to cut the wire entanglements and were killed, or dashed for the cover of a bank of sand or raised beach which runs along the curve of the bay. Those very few who reached this cover were out of immediate danger, but they were only a handful. The boats were destroyed where they grounded. Meanwhile, the men of the River Clyde tried to make their bridge of boats by sweeping the lighters into position and mooring them between the ship and the shore. They were killed as they worked, but others took their places. The bridge was made, and some of the monsters dashed along it from the ship and fell in heaps as they ran. As a second company followed, the moorings of the lighters broke or were shot. The men leaped into the water and were drowned or killed, or reached the beach and were killed, or fell wounded there and lay under fire, getting wound after wound till they died. Very, very few reached the sandbank. More brave men jumped aboard the lighters to remake the bridge. They were swept away or shot to pieces. The average life on those boats was some 3 minutes long, but they remade the bridge and the third company of the monsters doubled down to death along it under a storm of shrapnel which scarcely a man survived. The big guns in Asia were now shelling the River Clyde, and the hell of rapid fire never paused. More men tried to land, headed by Brigadier General Napier, who was instantly killed with nearly all his followers. Then, for long hours, the remainder stayed on board, down below in the grounded steamer, while the shots beat on her plates with a rattling clang which never stopped. Her 12 machine guns fired back, killing any Turk who showed, but nothing could be done to support the few survivors of the landing, who now lay under cover of the sandbank on the other side of the beach. It was almost certain death to try to leave the ship, but all through the day men leaped from her, with leave or without it, to bring water or succor to the wounded on the boats or beach. 100 brave men gave their lives thus. Every man there earned the cross that day. A boy earned it by one of the bravest deeds of the war, leaping into the sea with a rope in his teeth to try to secure a drifting lighter. The day passed thus, but at nightfall the Turks' fire paused, and the men came ashore from the River Clyde almost unharmed. They joined the survivors on the beach, and at once attacked the old fort and the village above it. These works were strongly held by the enemy. All had been ruined by the fire from the fleet, but in the rubble and ruin of old masonry there were thousands of hidden riflemen backed by machine guns. Again and again they beat off our attacks, for there was a bright moon and they knew the ground, and our men had to attack uphill over wire and broken earth and heaped stones in all the wreck and confusion and strangeness of war at night in a new place. Some of the Dublins and Munsters went astray in the ruins, and were wounded far from their fellows, and so lost. The Turks became more daring after dark. While the light lasted, they were checked by the River Clyde's machine guns, but at midnight they gathered unobserved and charged. They came right down onto the beach, and in the darkness and moonlight much terrible and confused fighting followed. Many were bayoneted, many shot. There was wild firing and crying, and then the Turk attack melted away, and their machine guns began again. When day dawned, the survivors of the landing party were crouched under the shelter of the sandbank. They had had no rest. Most of them had been fighting all night. All had landed across the corpses of their friends. No retreat was possible, nor was it dreamed of, but to stay there was hopeless. Lieutenant Colonel Doughty Wiley gathered them together for an attack. The fleet opened a terrific fire upon the ruins of the fort and village, and the landing party went forward again, fighting from bush to bush and from stone to stone, till the ruins were in their hands. Shells still fell among them. Single Turks, lurking under cover, sniped them and shot them. But the landing had been made good, and V Beach was secured to us. This was the worst and the bloodiest of all the landings. End of The Landing at V Beach, near Sedd-el-Bahr, by John Masefield.
Meeting at Night, by Robert Browning. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. Recording by Patrick Wallace. Meeting at Night. The grey sea and the long black land, and the yellow half-moon large and low, and the startled little waves that leap in fiery ringlets from their sleep, as I gain the cove with pushing prow, and quench its speed of the slushy sand. Then a mile of warm, sea-scented beach, 3 fields to cross till a farm appears, a tap at the pane, the quick sharp scratch and blue spurt of a lighted match, and a voice less loud through its joys and fears than the 2 hearts beating each to each. End of Meeting at Night, by Robert Browning. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
Icy Seaweed by F. St. Mars. Coffee Break Collection 40. Beaches. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Icy Seaweed. On the one hand, far as the eye could see, rose a white tablecloth of speckless snow. On the other, a bottle-green sea, cold and crisped with the froth of white horses, and over all hung a low canopy of leaden-hued sky. The waves bounded up the pebbly beach with a roar and a rush, and fell back, leaving the stones glistening in the freezing air. They were the only things that made any sound. All else was still as death, as though petrified. Then upon the silence there fell a harsh little noise, rather as if one pebble had been dropped on another. An especially big wave floundered up the beach, and it was as if it had tossed into the air a particularly big brown leaf which was blown away by the knife-edged nor'east wind, only to fall again on the tide line. It is strange, though, how nature manages to hide her children in such bleak times. Looking closely, one would have seen that something was moving where the leaf had fallen. Very hard indeed to see among the pebbles. In fact, the leaf was a bird. He ran anon, nimbly dodging out of the plucking reach of a wave, and as quickly and shrewdly running back again over the wet to see if the wave had cast up anything eatable. He was a quiet little chap, brown atop, with a blotchy spotted breast, smaller, a trifle, than a lark. So very frail he looked that one wondered what chance he had there at all, dodging the sledgehammer breakers and laughing at the wind. Yet he was born to the scene, that fragile one, had lived therein all his life, and, for all I know, and for all his actions seem to show, revelled in it. He was a rock pipit, cousin to that other, the common meadow pipit, the titlark of our fields. Cold it was as charity, but not too cold for him to poke about among the icy seaweed, and, leaping in the air, literally catch the elusive sandhopper on the hop. Bitter it was, but not too bitter for him to race down in water after the receding wave, and literally snatch some tiny shrimplet up under the jaws of Father Neptune's thundering death. Famine was abroad in the land. Legions and phalanxes of birds had come to the shore to feed there, because the ground was frozen and like iron inland. You could see them, starlings, chaffinches, thrushes, blackbirds, larks, and a dozen others, moping in corners, but none seemed to know where to look for food, or how. It was the little rock pipit and his party who showed them. You could behold them timidly venturing down to the long, sinuous tide line, fluttering away terror-stricken at each wave burst. The terrible day drew on slowly. The starving, moping, half-numbed visitors to the shore grew more and more numerous, and melted away almost as fast as they came, driven back, terrified, by the appalling cold of the wind. But the rock pipit kept gaily on. The rougher the sea, The more food it flung up, and plenty of food meant a warm body to resist the cold. Strange, too, were these visitors, and our little rock pipit and his pals needed to keep their sharpest of sharp eyes open. Now a company of great wild geese would go clanging and bugling south overhead. Now a robber band of grey crows would come loafing by, and stop to murder some half-dead bird, and try to murder the pipits, only to discover their mistake very quickly. Now a bunch of wild duck would beat by on whistling wings, and, again, a vast band, like some huge party-coloured cloud, of peewits would go drifting past, whilst ever and anon a big gull, cruel-eyed, white and dangerous, would come floating along. Then night came down, and all the world shuddered and was still. The pipits roosted, half buried in sand and snow, under an old boat. They were quite warm, because they were well fed and used to it. Not so the others near them. In the low briar bushes, in the feathery tamarisks, and in the cold, marshy fields were foodless birds, freezing stiff in death where they slept, thrushes, redwings, blackbirds, larks, and the like, who would never wake again. End of Icy Seaweed by F. St. Mars, a pseudonym of Frank Howard Atkins.
North Beach by Bret Harte. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. Recording by Public Domain Scholar. North Beach, after Spencer. Low where the castle of bold Pfeiffer throws its sullen shadow on the rolling tide. No more the home where joy and wealth repose, but now where wassailers in sails abide. See yon long quay that stretches far and wide, well known to citizens as Wharf of Maigs. There each sweet Sabbath walks in maiden pride, the pensive Margaret and brave Pat, whose legs encased in broadcloth oft keep time with pegs. Here cometh oft the tender nursery maid, while in her ear her love his tale doth pour. Meantime her infant doth her charge evade, and rambleth sagely on the sandy shore, till the sly sea crab, low in ambush laid, seizeth his leg and biteth him full sore. Ah me, what sound the shuddering echoes bore, when his small tremble mixed with ocean's roar. Hard by there stands an ancient hostelry, and at its side a garden, where the bear, the stealthy catamount and coon agree to work deceit on all who gather there. And when Augusta, that unconscious fair, with nuts and apples, plieth brew and free, lo, the green parrot claweth her back hair, and the grey monkey grabbeth fruits that she on her gay bonnet wears, and laugheth loud in glee. End of North Beach. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
On the Beach at Night Alone by Walt Whitman. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. On the Beach at Night Alone. On the beach at night alone, as the old mother sways her to and fro, singing her husky song, as I watch the bright stars shining, I think a thought of the clef of the universes and of the future. A vast similitude interlocks all spheres, grown, ungrown, small, large, suns, moons, planets, all distances of place, however wide, all distances of time, all inanimate forms, all souls, all living bodies, though they be ever so different, or in different worlds, all gaseous, watery, vegetable, mineral processes, the fishes, the brutes, all nations, colours, barbarisms, civilizations, languages, all identities that have existed or may exist on this globe or any globe, all lives and deaths, all of the past, present, future. This vast similitude spans them, and always has spanned, and shall forever span them, and compactly hold and enclose them. End of On the Beach at Night Alone by Walt Whitman. Recording by Alan Mapstone in Oxford, England. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
On the Seashore by Rabindranath Tagore. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. On the seashore of endless worlds, children meet. The infinite sky is motionless overhead, and the restless water is boisterous. On the seashore of endless worlds, the children meet with shouts and dances. They build their houses with sand, and they play with empty shells. With withered leaves they weave their boats, and smilingly float them on the vast deep. Children have their play on the seashore of worlds. They know not how to swim. They know not how to cast nets. Pearl fishers dive for pearls. Merchants sail in their ships, while children gather pebbles and scatter them again. They seek not for hidden treasures. They know not how to cast nets. The sea surges up with laughter, and pale gleams the smile of the sea beach. Death-dealing waves sing meaningless ballads to the children, even like a mother while rocking her baby's cradle. The sea plays with children, and pale gleams the smile of the sea beach. On the seashore of endless worlds, children meet. Tempest roams in the pathless sky. Ships are wrecked in the trackless water. Death is abroad, and children play. On the seashore of endless worlds is the great meeting of children. End of On the Seashore by Rabindranath Tagore. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.
The Seashore by Professor P. Martin Duncan. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Peter Yearsley. From Chapter 1. The seashore is the debatable ground where the sea is constantly striving to wear away the land. It is the present limit to the ocean and sea, and a little beyond, for it reaches inland further than the wildest waves and the highest tides can attain. Where the seashore begins and ends is a matter of opinion, but all of it is influenced in some way or other by the sea. In some places, high cliffs or rocks keep the sea from driving in upon the land. They are lofty and may reach for miles along the coast. The high tide comes up their steep faces for many yards, and when it retires a rocky strip is seen at their feet, and thence a breadth of rock, shingle, or sand leads down with a greater or less slope to the water's edge. Here there can be no doubt how far the shore reaches inland, for the cliffs limit it. In other parts of our own and other maritime countries there may be no high land on the coast, but marshes and lowlands, with or without sandhills, form barriers to the incursion of the sea. The highest tides have their limit in these places, but the wash of the sea and the spray, together with the drainage of the sea into the land, make the water saltish for some distance inland, and the earth close by is sodden with salt. Then long stretches of mud or sand form the slope over which the sea rolls up to the land, and which is exposed and remains more or less wet at low tide. In these low-lying parts of the coast the shore is not very distinctly separated from the land, and often miles of swamp, marsh, and sandbanks are invaded by the sea during storm and very high tides.
The ditches near the sea contain salt or brackish water, and the whole of this kind of coastline has a peculiar and desolate appearance. If these two kinds of coast are taken as the extremes, all the varieties of seashores will fit in between them, but still it will appear that, whilst in some the limit between the land and the sea is very decided, in others it is not so. Seawards, the shore is very variable in its extent. In some places it may barely exist, or may only be a ledge of rock between the cliff, the high land, and the water, and in others miles of sand, shingle, and mud may be between the furthest reach of the waves and the limit of the low tide. The commonest examples of shores are those which are between these extremes. Some seashores slope very gradually to the sea, and their extent is then usually great, and others, which are limited in their breadth, are more precipitous. Perhaps it is best to say that a seashore is the part of a coast which, at some time or other, is covered or uncovered by the sea, and that it has an extension inland, where the spray and wind are felt, and act on the land, and also seawards, where some shore is only uncovered during excessively low tides. According to this view, it is possible to portion out a seashore into a greater or less number of breadths, which may be placed side by side from the land to the sea. Firstly, a breadth will pass along the coast, and will contain the marshy, swampy land, or the hard rock down to the edge of the highest tide mark. It may be miles across, or only a few feet in extent. Secondly, a breadth will be found between this last and the sea, where it is highest during common tides and storms. Thirdly, a breadth will exist 4 times in the 24 hours as dry land, and for the rest of the time it will be beneath the waves, and this is situated between ordinary high and low tide marks. Finally, a breadth will be between this last and the everlasting sea. It is narrow, and is only uncovered for a few hours in the months of the year when there are what are called low spring tides. These 4 breadths are termed zones or belts, and in common language the first is the beach and coastline, the second is the shore, the third is the tide shore, and the fourth is low spring shore. Differing in their extent and in the nature of their surface, in every few miles of the coast of a maritime country like Great Britain, the zones have their peculiar animals and plants, and waifs and strays, the wreckage of the sea, of its floor, and of the coastline. When the whole of the shore slopes very rapidly to the sea, the third and fourth zones are small in extent, but when the slope is gradual, they are large, and when the tide rises much and falls correspondingly, the third zone is usually uncovered but for a short time. The tide usually moves along the shore, and does not simply come in onto the land and recede, for one tide moves in one direction and the next in the opposite. Thus, floating substances are carried along the coast for miles by the rising tide, and come back again, more or less, with the falling tide. Tide, wind, and wave for ever act on the surface of the zones, but their action is the greatest on those which are landwards. There are other wreckers of the coast, for the heat of the sun, the winter's frost, the rain, and the chemical action of the air, one and all crumble and break off pieces of rock or earth. These fall on to the tidal shore, and are rolled here and there and up and down, to be turned into mud, sand, and pebbles. The cliffs and bold headlands are worn year by year, and during centuries they lose much and retire landwards. Needles and no-man's lands stand out on the shore or out at sea, testifying to the former extension of the land, and shore exists where there was once high, solid rock. The shore consists of the worn surface of the old land, rock, or earth, and this is usually hidden by stone or stuff which has fallen from the cliffs, and by sand or mud or pebble and stone which the tide has swept along. But often the jagged or rounded remains of the former rock project out of the sand, mud, and stone on the shore, and they may be bare or covered with seaweed. In other spots, the hard rock is hollowed out into places which let the water stand in them, like so many puddles, pools, and ponds, when the tide has gone down. These are often crowded with marine plants and animals of the shore. The rolling stones, the wash of the tide, and the rush and drawback of the waves are ever wearing off the surface of the shore and grooving it or planing it flat, and in some places where the stones do not collect, this is very evident. But where they form great masses of pebbles or shingle, it cannot be readily seen. There are many shores around Great Britain where the rock is hard, which are rarely covered with pebbles, boulders, and sand, and the seaweed grows on them and protects them against the sea. But usually the rock is only exposed here and there, and the stones which collect and cover much of it come from a distance and are on the move at every tide. In some places where the coast is composed of clay or soft sandstone, the shore is muddy, soft, and may be uncovered or covered by stones. The wear of the sea is but little seen in such places as this, and still less so where the coast is low and flat, and the shore is very extensive, and the water is shallow for a long distance. In fact, on many of these flat shores, instead of erosion taking place, the sea is adding to the land by depositing. This is particularly the case at the entrance of great, and of many small, rivers. Their mud collects in the shallows at their mouths, and is added to by sand and shingle, so that land grows seawards instead of the reverse. The seashore is then, usually, uninviting, and often consists of large mud flats. Again, in some localities, where much sand collects on the surface of the rock forming the seashore, it may be quick. In many places, the rising tide gets under the sand, which suddenly becomes like so much sand and water, and the falling tide leaves it hard for a while. The ordinary condition of a sandy shore is either that of a number of very slightly rounded stretches of sand, with drainage streams between them, or it is pretty hard, readily dug into, and marked on the surface by ripples. The ripple mark on sand always strikes the observer. It represents little ripple-like waves, wonderfully regular, and each has a ridge and a valley. They are very lasting, but disappear on the slightest movement of the wet sand as the tide comes in. These little ridges and valleys are not found when the water covers the sand at a considerable depth, but they are especially seen between high and low spring tide limit. Such marks can be made artificially with sand, for instance on the bottom of a large basin. If some sand is placed on the bottom and water be poured in, and the edge of the basin be pushed, a to and fro motion of the water will occur, and it will be continued down to the sand. As the motion ceases, the sand will be seen to collect in ridges side by side, and they will be perfect when the motion stops. Motion of the seawater in one direction over soft sand will not produce ripple mark well, but a slight to and fro movement will do it to perfection. Infinitely more wonderful than these ripples are the pebble beaches, for they often extend for many miles and have a very considerable thickness. Worn in the first instance from distant rocks, born of huge boulders, which the mighty waves laden with rolling stones have broken down, the pebble is formed by rolling against others, and the result of its wear and tear is carried off in the form of sand. They travel miles and miles along the coast with the tide, and therefore it is very common to find one kind of rock forming the coastline, and the shore close by, having pebbles made up of stone which is not known to be near at hand. Thus, on the coast of South Devon, the red rocks form the coastline. They are sandy and are covered in some places by a beautiful green vegetation. The sea is often of the brightest blue or grey when the sky is not much tinted with colour, but the sea covering the shore at high tide looks whitish, and this is produced by the white and light slate-coloured pebbles which reach up close to the red rocks. They are not made of red sand. On the contrary, they are of grey and bluish limestone, and come from rocks which are situated miles to the west. Further east, the Chesil Bank is seen, and it is an enormous shore of pebbles, which have been carried along the coast and have found an uncertain resting place there. Every tide makes more sand out of the hardest pebbles, as they knock one against the other and wear away, and the sand already made scrubs them as it is hurried hither and thither by the waves. In some places, where the sea is giving up rather than taking off land, the sand which is cast up may be the result of the wear of distant pebble making, or it may be composed of myriads of broken tiny shells which once lived in shallow water. It has been already stated that the sea is encroaching on the land in some parts of England, and that it does not do so in others, whilst it appears to be giving place to land elsewhere. In the first instance, the seashore must grow, as it were, must increase landwards, and it really does so at different rates in different parts of the country. In some parts of the coast a yard is lost every year, and the sea comes in on the land so much the more. Cliffs wear away and fall, fields, houses, and even towns have tumbled onto the shore in times gone by, and the seashore is on their site but lower down. But all the space once occupied by cliff and rock is soon worn by the sea, and is covered gradually by the tide, and after years have elapsed, this foreshore is deepened seawards by the rolling stone and rushing waves, so that the visible beach or shore diminishes in size unless a corresponding landward extension takes place. Although the cliffs and rocks fall, and their remains are swept away from the level of the shore by currents, tides, and waves, yet, as has already been noticed, much of the ruined surface, levelled down as it has been, is covered up by relics of their wear and tear, or by stone brought from a distance. It is only after some severe gale of wind, accompanied by a very high tide, that these stones and covering up relics are swept away, and the old rock surface comes in view. All these matters are of importance, for the living creatures of the seashore depend upon the state of things in each of the zones for their ability to exist and flourish. Where the coast has been low and the sea has gradually encroached, the remains of stumps of trees are often exposed after a gale. Then what is called part of a submarine forest is opened to the sight. There are many of them around England, and especially on the coast of Norfolk and Essex on the east, in many places on the south coast as far as Tor Bay, and on the west they are found in the Bristol Channel and about Holyhead and the River Mersey. Sometimes it appears that the sunken forest has not been altogether produced by the encroachment of the sea on the land, and that sinking of the coast, or slipping of part of it, has caused the event. When the sea comes in on the land, it wears everything before it, and any forest land would in most instances be completely wrecked, and the roots of the great trees would be worn and torn out of the soft earth and carried off to sea by the waves, tides, and currents. On looking at some smaller forests which are laid bare at very low tides, it is found that they consist of stumps of trees of great size, whose roots are still in the clay in which they grew, and a quantity of mud and sand is between the stumps and protects them from the usual action of water on submerged land. It appears that some movement of the earth's crust had caused the coast to sink down, and then the sea invaded without wearing off the land. The trees were ruined by the sea water and broken off, and the mud, sand, and stone collected around the stumps. It is not uncommon to see collections of stone and shells high up on the face of a rock or cliff, and when they are carefully examined, they are found to resemble a bit of shore or a piece of the beach, hoisted up many feet above the present line of the waves and tides. They are called raised beaches, and they were formed by an upheaval of part of the coast with its shore during movements in the crust of the globe. There was a shore and a cliff, as there may be now, and the whole was pushed up some 20, 30, or more than 100 feet beyond the reach of the highest tides and waves. In years past, the waves broke upon the cliff beneath the upraised portion and wore it away bit by bit, and then the air and sun acted with the rain in wearing it, and now only a portion remains. Every coastline is subject to these sinkings down and upheavals, and, of course, a seashore is produced rapidly and is made broad and shallow during the first kind of occurrence, and is stopped and has to be formed afresh during the last. As these remarkable movements of the outside of the globe are not universal, and affect some parts of a coast more than others, they will tend to give great variety to the seashores of a country. Together with the varying action of the tides, waves, and currents upon cliffs and rocks of different stones and earths, and of many hardnesses, these movements have made the shores of this country very curiously varied in their size and character. End of part of Chapter 1 of The Seashore by Professor P. Martin Duncan.
The Shore's Song to the Sea by Cale Young Rice. Coffee Break Collection 40. Beaches. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Out on the rocks primeval, the grey main rocks that slant and break to the sea, with the bay and juniper round them, and the leagues on leagues before them, and the terns and gulls wheeling and crying over, I sat heart still, and listened. And first I could only hear the wind in my ears, and the foam trying to fill the high rock shallows. And then, over the wind, over the whitely blossoming foam, lo, lo, like a lover's song beginning, I heard the nuptial pleading of the old shore, a pleading ever occultly growing louder. O sea, glad bride of me, born of the bright ether, and given to wed me, given to glance ever for me, and gleam and dance in the sun. Come to my arms, come to my reaching arms, that seem so still and unavailing to take you and hold you, yet never forget, never by day or night, the hymeneal delights of your embracings. Come, for the moon, my rival, shall not have you. No, for though twice daily afar he beckons, and you go, you, my bride, a little way back to meet him, as if he once had been your lover, he too, and again enspelled you. Soon, soon, I know it is only feigning. For turning, playfully turning, tidally turning, you rush foamingly, swiftly back to my arms. And so I would have you rush, so rush now. Come from the sands where you have stayed too long, come from the reefs where you have wandered silent, for ebbings are good, the restful ebbings of love. But oh, the bridal flowings of it are better. And now I would have you loose again my tresses, my locks rough and weedy, rough and brown and brinily tangled. But oh, again as a bridegroom's, when your tide, whispering in, lifts them up, pulsingly up, with kisses. Come with your veil thrown back, breaking to spray, and oh, with plangent passion, come with your naked sweetness, salt and wholesome, to my bosom. Let not a cave or crevice of me miss you, or cranny, for oh, the nuptial joy you float into me, the coolly ambient clasp of you I have waited overlong, and I need to know again its marriage meaning. For I think it is not alone to bring forth life that I mate you. More than life is the beauty of life with love. Plentiful are the children that you bear to me, the blossoms, the fruits and all the creatures at your breast dewily fed, but mating is troubled with a far higher meaning, a hint of a consummation for all things. Come utterly then, utterly to me come, and let us surge together, clasped close, in infinite union, until we reach a transcendence of all birth and all dying, an ecstasy holding the universe blended, such ecstasy as is its ultimate aim. So sang the shore, the long bay-scented shore, broken by many an isle, many an inlet, bird-embosomed, and the sea gave answer, bridally, tidally turning, and leapt radiant into his rocky arms. End of The Shore's Song to the Sea by Cale Young Rice. Recording by Algy Pug.
Stanzas written in dejection near Naples by Percy Bysshe Shelley. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. Recorded for LibriVox by Bartholomew Begley, Dublin, October 2024. The sun is warm, the sky is clear. The waves are dancing fast and bright. Blue isles and snowy mountains wear the purple noon's transparent might. The breath of the moist earth is light around its unexpanded buds. Like many a voice of one delight, the winds, the birds, the ocean floods, the city's voice itself is soft like solitude's. I see the deep's untrampled floor with green and purple seaweeds strown. I see the waves upon the shore like light dissolved in star showers thrown. I sit upon the sands alone. The lightning of the noontide ocean is flashing round me, and a tone arises from its measured motion. How sweet did any heart now share in my emotion. Alas, I have nor hope nor health, nor peace within nor calm around, nor that content surpassing wealth the sage in meditation found, and walked with inward glory crowned. Nor fame, nor power, nor love, nor leisure. Others I see whom these surround. Smiling they live, and call life pleasure. To me this cup has been dealt in another measure. Yet now despair itself is mild, as even the winds and waters are. I could lie down like a tired child, and weep away this life of care, which I have borne and yet must bear, till death like sleep might steal on me, and I might feel in the warm air my cheek grow cold, and hear the sea breathe o'er my dying brain its last monotony. Some might lament that I were cold, as I when this sweet day is gone, which my lost heart, too soon grown old, insults with this untimely moan. They might lament, for I am one whom men love not, and yet regret, unlike this day, which when the sun shall on its stainless glory set, will linger, though enjoyed, like joy in memory yet. End of poem. This recording is in the public domain.
The Island by A. Milne. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. If I had a ship, I'd sail my ship I'd sail my ship through eastern seas, down to a beach where the slow waves thunder. The green curls over and the white falls under. Boom, boom, boom on the sun-bright sand. Then I'd leave my ship and I'd land and climb the steep white sand and climb to the trees, the 6 dark trees, the cocoa-nut trees on the cliff's green crown. Hands and knees to the cocoa-nut trees, face to the cliff as the stones patter down, up, 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 staggering, stumbling, round the corner where the rock is crumbling, round the shoulder, over this boulder, up to the top where the 6 trees stand. And there I would rest and lie, my chin in my hands, and gaze at the dazzle of sand below, and the green waves curling slow, and the gray-blue distant haze, where the sea goes up to the sky. And I'd say to myself, as I looked so lazily down at the sea, there's nobody else in the world, and the world was made for me. End of The Island by A. Milne.
To a Seabird by Bret Harte. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Public Domain Scholar. To a Seabird. Sauntering hither on listless wings, careless vagabond of the sea, little thou heedest the surf that sings, the bar that thunders, the shell that rings. Give me to thy company. Little thou hast, old friend, that's new. Storms and wrecks are old things to thee. Sick am I of these charges too. Little to care for, little to rue. I on the shore, and thou on the sea. All of thy wanderings far and near bring thee at last to shore and me. All of my journeyings end them here. This our tether must be our cheer. I on the shore, and thou on the sea. Lazily rocking on ocean's breast, something in common, old friend, have we. Thou on the shingle seekest thy nest. I to the waters look for rest. I on the shore, and thou on the sea. End of To a Seabird.
A Trip to Botany Bay by Anonymous. Coffee Break Collection 40, Beaches. Recording by Beeswaxcandle. A Trip to Botany Bay.
Come, come, my lads, for we must away, bound down in irons to Botany Bay. It is no use to weep, nor yet to complain, nor perhaps I may see old England Escud again. So come, come away, for I can no longer stay. Let us hope we may meet wi' a far better day. Although we're bound to a foreign clime, there's many of us young lads just in our prime, who by wisdom we ought to have been better taught, for wisdom's ne'er good without its dear bought. So come, come away, for I can no longer stay. Let us hope we may meet with a far better day. Now many pretty lasses in Botany may be seen, who knows but she might be an Indian queen, decked out in diamonds to see the British fair, a fig for transportation, little do we care. So come, come away, for I can no longer stay. Let us hope we may meet with a far better day. Now when to Botany Bay we do come, the first thing we do is to chase us a king. 'Tis of no use to laugh, nor yet to make fun. Who knows but it may be the noted Barrington? So come, come away, for I can no longer stay. Let us hope we may meet with a far better day. Farewell, my pretty girls, I'll bid you adieu. It may be a long time before I see you. So fill up the glass and drink it off, I pray. Success to the lads that's bound to Botany Bay. So come, come away, for I can no longer stay. Let us hope we may meet wi' a far better day. End of A Trip to Botany Bay by Anonymous. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain.